Welcome to The Explainer. For years, the whole debate about God's existence has been framed as a numbers game, a question of probability. But what if it's not? Today, we're diving into a source that claims to have definitive proof, pitting a very familiar name against a radical new challenger. For as long as I can remember, the big conversation around modern atheism has been all about probability, right? The idea that a creator is super unlikely. But what if someone just skipped all that? What if they claim to have 100% definitive proof? That's the huge shift our source material is exploring.
And this really sets the stage for our two main players. On one side, you've got the famous evolutionary biologist Richard Dawkins, representing that classic view: God almost certainly doesn't exist. But on the other side, we have author Senad Dizdarevic, who comes in and says, nope, it's not about probability at all. It's an absolute certainty.
All right, so to really get a grip on just how big of a shift this is supposed to be, we've got to start with the established view. Let's first dig into how our source material presents the arguments of Richard Dawkins.
Okay, so Dawkins' big one, his signature move, is what's called the ultimate Boeing 747 gambit. The idea is pretty simple, really. He says that any god powerful enough to create the universe would have to be incredibly complex. I mean, way more complex than the universe itself. And from a statistical point of view, that makes the existence of a being like that, well, extremely improbable.
But here's the thing. The source we're looking at today argues that this whole probability-based way of thinking, it's actually built on some pretty shaky ground. It leaves the door just a little bit open for doubt. The source breaks it down into four main critiques. First, it accuses him of philosophical ignorance, basically just dismissing entire fields of thought. Second, probability confusion, mixing up what's highly unlikely with what's actually impossible. Third, a kind of scientific overreach, trying to apply biological ideas where they just don't fit. And finally, what it calls an emotional weakness. This approach just doesn't provide that definitive yes or no answer.
Okay, so if the whole probability thing is flawed, what's the alternative? This is where the source brings in the work of Senad Dizdarevic, and it frames his arguments not just as a better idea, but as a total game changer, a complete paradigm shift. Now, Dizdarevic's case is built on what he calls four unshakable proofs. First up, there's a thermodynamic proof rooted in physics, which says creation is physically impossible. Then you have the paradox of gods, a logical argument that all the competing one true gods out there essentially cancel each other out. The third is an ontological proof, a philosophical argument against creation from nothing. And the fourth is all about experiential validation, drawing from decades of his own personal research and contact. And to really drive this home, the source actually brings in a surprising piece of evidence. It cites an analysis that it says comes from ChatGPT, which apparently concluded his reasoning is 100% logically true and leaves no space for doubt.
So when you put them side by side, the difference is just huge. The science shifts from probability to the first law of thermodynamics. The logic moves from that 747 idea to the paradox of competing gods. But the biggest leap, the conclusion goes from almost certainly no God to definitely no God. It's a massive change in certainty.
Okay, but here's where things take a really interesting turn. These proofs, they're not just standalone arguments. According to the source, they're part of a much, much bigger picture, a hidden cosmic reality that explains, well, pretty much everything. The name for this hidden reality, according to the source, is the karmic organization. And what is it? Well, it's described as a group of cosmic beings who basically built our reality like a giant matrix and pre-programmed all of our lives, right from the very beginning.
So if you follow that logic, what does it mean for religion? Well, in this worldview, religions aren't just something humans came up with. The source claims they are actually a sophisticated system of control, created and put in place by this very same cosmic organization. And this idea leads to a really mind-bending conclusion, that influential thinkers, people like Richard Dawkins, they're not actually acting on their own free will. Instead, they're just unknowingly playing out roles that were written for them in this grand cosmic script.
Yeah, the source doesn't mince words here at all. It claims, and I'm quoting, the Karmicons wrote Dawkins' book long before Richard was born. And the implication is huge. It argues that Dizdarevic's own work is special, that it's the only thing written on Earth that wasn't pre-programmed, which is what allows it to reveal the truth about this whole matrix. Okay, so you might be thinking, where is this all going, right? If there's this giant cosmic control system, what happens next? Well, the source material lays out a future for humanity that is dramatic and, to be honest, completely utopia. Get this, the source claims this karmic organization has already been dismantled on something like 200,000 other worlds. And Earth? We're described as the very last holdout, living under a planetary blockade that is supposedly about to come to an end. And once this liberation happens, well, the promises are pretty incredible. We're talking about a list of gifts for every single person on the planet, moving to new worlds, getting brand new, young, healthy bodies, free houses, a new partner of your choice, $1 million. Oh, and the complete end of all evil, poverty, disease, and death. Just everything.
So, what's the final piece of the puzzle? What's the ultimate proof for all of this? The source offers one last incredible promise, that after this liberation event, all of humanity will get to meet, face-to-face, the actual beings who invented the idea of God and created all our religions.
So there you have it. We've gone from the laws of thermodynamics all the way to a cosmic matrix and a promised utopia. It's a really radical case. And it leaves us with one heck of a question to think about. Are we looking at a truly revolutionary kind of proof, or are we witnessing the birth of an entirely new mythology?